prince, sitting inside Buckingham Palace, voluntarily walking into one of the most devastating interviews in the history of the British royal family. He thought he was going to clear his name. Instead, he destroyed it. This is part 2 of the Jeffrey Epstein story, and this part is about the man who had everything: the title, the palace, the protection of one of the most powerful institutions on earth, and lost it all. Not because someone took it from him, but because he opened his mouth. Prince Andrew, Duke of York, second son of Queen Elizabeth II, born into a life that most people cannot even imagine. He was a war hero. He flew helicopters in the Falklands War, and Britain loved him for it. He had military titles, royal duties, charitable organizations, and the full weight of the monarchy behind him. For decades, he was untouchable, but there was one problem: his friendship with Jeffrey Epstein. By November 2019, Epstein was already dead, found hanging in his prison cell 3 months earlier, and the pressure on Prince Andrew had been building for years. Court documents, accusations, photographs. The public wanted answers, and Andrew decided he was going to give them. He agreed to a sit-down interview with BBC Newsnight, broadcast live from Buckingham Palace. His team believed it would put the story to rest. What followed was something that journalists, PR experts, and royal historians still talk about today. Not because it was brave, but because it was a catastrophe. The interviewer was Emily Maitlis, calm, precise, prepared, and from the very first question, something felt deeply wrong. Andrew was asked about Virginia Giuffre, the woman who had accused him of abusing her when she was 17 years old after being trafficked by Epstein. Andrew's response was immediate. He said he had absolutely no recollection of ever meeting her. None. He said the photograph, the now famous image showing his arm around a teenage Virginia with Ghislaine Maxwell smiling in the background, he suggested it might be fake. He said the night Virginia described, the night she claims she was with him at a London nightclub called Tramp. That night, he was at a Pizza Express restaurant in Woking with his daughter. He remembered it specifically, he said, because it was an unusual thing for him to do. The world watched, and the world did not believe him. But it wasn't just what he said, it was how he said it. There was no emotion, no acknowledgement of the victims, no sympathy for the girls whose lives had been destroyed by Epstein's network. When Maitlis pushed him, asked him whether he felt any guilt, any regret, any sorrow for what those young women had experienced, Andrew said he did not regret his friendship with Epstein. He said the opportunities Epstein gave him to meet people and learn things were very useful. He said he was, and these are his exact words, too honorable a person to have done what Virginia described. Too honorable. That phrase landed like a stone. Then came the moment that the entire internet could not stop talking about. Virginia Giuffre had described dancing with Andrew at the club. She remembered him sweating heavily on the dance floor. It was a specific human detail, the kind of detail that is difficult to invent. Andrew's response? He said that was impossible because at the time he had a medical condition, a result of an adrenaline overdose he suffered during the Falklands War. That meant he could not sweat. He said he was physically incapable of sweating. He offered this not as a footnote, he offered it as proof. Within hours, it became one of the most mocked statements any member of the royal family had ever made publicly. Doctors questioned it, journalists questioned it, the public questioned it, and photographs surfaced. Photographs of Andrew visibly sweating at public events around the same time period. The interview lasted 64 minutes. By the end of it, Andrew appeared satisfied. He reportedly gave Maitlis and her team a tour of Buckingham Palace afterward. He believed it had gone well. It had not gone well. The reaction was swift and it was merciless. Media organizations across the world called it a car crash. Others called it a nuclear explosion. Royal commentators said it was the worst public relations disaster for the monarchy since the death of Princess Diana. Within 48 hours, the chief executive of one of Andrew's flagship charitable programs resigned. Then another. Sponsors began pulling out. Staff members quit. The phone calls from the palace started. And just 3 days after the interview aired, Prince Andrew released a statement. He said he was stepping back from public royal duties for the foreseeable future. Queen Elizabeth II, his own mother, stripped him of his honorary military affiliations. He would no longer be permitted to use the title His Royal Highness in any official capacity. In one interview, in 64 minutes, Andrew had lost nearly everything he had spent a lifetime building. But the story did not end there. In 2021, Virginia Giuffre filed a civil lawsuit against him in a New York court. Assault, intentional infliction of emotional distress. Andrew's legal team fought back hard. They argued the case should be dismissed. In January 2022, a judge disagreed. The case would proceed. 1 month later, Andrew settled. The exact number was never confirmed publicly, but multiple sources estimated it at several million pounds. He made no admission of guilt. He pledged to make a donation to Giuffre's charity supporting victims of abuse, and he said, once again, that he denied everything. But a question settled over the public that no statement could answer. matter. If you are innocent, why pay millions to make it go away? Then in October 2025, something that once felt unthinkable became real. Andrew voluntarily surrendered his Duke of York title. He said the accusations were distracting from the work of the royal family. Days later, King Charles III went further, stripping Andrew of every remaining title, his prince title, his Order of the Garter, his place in the institution he was born into. He was evicted from Royal Lodge, his home of many years near Windsor Castle. He became, in the eyes of the law and the palace, simply Andrew Mountbatten Windsor, not a prince, not a duke, not a working royal, just a man. And then, on February 19th, 2026, on his own 66th birthday, police arrived at his door. He was arrested on suspicion of misconduct in public office, the allegation that he had passed classified government trade documents to Jeffrey Epstein while serving as the UK's trade envoy. He was released under investigation. The man who once stood on the balcony of Buckingham Palace, who flew into war zones, who shook hands with presidents and prime ministers, arrested on his birthday, stripped of everything. Still, to this day, denying it all. One interview, one decision to sit down and talk. That was the moment Andrew chose. And from that moment, everything unraveled. Because the truth has a way of doing that. Whether it comes out in a courtroom or in 64 minutes on live television, the Epstein story is not over. The files are still being released. The investigations are still ongoing. And part 3 is coming, where we go deeper into the network, the names and the woman who made it all possible. Ghislaine Maxwell. Stay with us.